Hi Kules, welcome back to the channel. Welcome to the late upload. I want to apologize for the late upload, however. But like I said, the live game wasn't available here in South Africa, so I kind of had to wait to see the game in which we saw Hansi Flick's tactics come to life and basically come together. And we're already starting to see signs of a typical Hansi Flick. But as always, do subscribe to the channel. It's going to help us a lot to get this family to grow bigger. We upload weekly tactical content regarding Barcelona only. So if that's you, please do subscribe. Let's get right into the video. In the build-up phase, Barcelona would look to split their centre-backs on either side of the goalkeeper, and Güler and Diaz made turns to join Endrick as a front two, and Cassado went a little bit higher than Bernal, and Barcelona had a numerical advantage in the build-up phase 3 against 2. So Inigo and Andres Christensen would receive the ball just outside of these two players and drive up the pitch, which Ceballos couldn't really press Balde because then he would leave Pablo Torre open, and if he would stay narrow, then he would leave Balde open. And Lucas couldn't really come out of his position in order to press Balde because he was pushed back by Pau Victor, which was great tactics. And Barcelona always had a number of players in that area to make sure that the gegenpressing was also on for them. I have been really impressed with the way our centre-backs have been utilized. A lot of freedom and risk-taking. And you can see here Real Madrid didn't really press too high against Barcelona, so that allowed us to be adventurous. And Inigo forcing Endrick back because he was receiving the ball just outside of him, right? And Güler couldn't really come to Balde. He had to stay narrow because of the pass in field. And you can see here that Martin wants to come out, but Pablo Torre will then receive the ball. But at the same time, you can see the options that Inigo can pass to here, which is the numbers that we have wide. The double pivot has already been successful for Barca, but even though we have a double pivot, you don't see the back three that we normally see with Xavi or have seen with Xavi. They would stay in their normal position, and the double pivot would then be much more flexible, in order to drop into the half space and not make us so static. So a lot of movement there. And you can see Cassado many a times dropped in between Inigo and Balde to receive the ball, but that was not to say that that was a common thing and consistently have been done. If Balde had to stay back, Cassado was more than happy to go out wide and receive the ball just behind Güler, who would then press Balde, of course. Over here you can clearly see that Güler is in two minds because Balde is deep and Cassado is taking his place. So he cannot really go out and press Balde because then he would leave Cassado open, and that's flexibility from our pivot. You can see here Bernal as the lone pivot, and then Cassado was more flexible like a box-to-box midfielder for me, which was amazing to see from these youngsters as well. And you can see here that even though we have a double pivot, you didn't see a back three because Balde was wide. And this is the flexibility I've been talking about, right? Which means Balde would only go into the back line when it's needed, right? Like I said, our centre-backs have really been encouraged to be adventurous even when they were under pressure, right? And you did see that Cassado went up into the half space, which means that Brahim Diaz couldn't really stay too wide because then Cassado would receive the ball over in the half space. So he was kind of really forced to stay a little bit narrow, right? In order for the ball to not be going into Cassado. But then Barcelona would just circulate the ball over to the right back, and Bernal did drop in between the centre-backs in order to draw Diaz into a press, right? And that would open up the half space for one of the wingers, maybe Pau or Hernandez, because they did switch, and that would openly open up the right wing for our right back in order to get on the ball and look for those early crosses, which was a very vertical and direct approach. In this case, it's Modric that has to stay narrow in order to avoid the pass going into the winger in this instance, right? So this is really great tactics, and you won't be able to stop Barcelona from circulating. And you can also see that the pass, if whoever, Brahim would go too wide, then the winger would receive the ball in the half space. So a very vertical approach. And you can see the centre backs, even when they were pressed, Barcelona were encouraged to play out from the back and be adventurous, right? So this is a really great approach from Barca. And you can see that Brahim in this case were drawn into a press into Andres Christensen, which ultimately would allow Barcelona to open up the space. So you can see a very vertical approach, and this is what Lewandowski talked about. Another great tactic that we saw is because of Pau Torres' positioning, Real Madrid had to defend narrow. And Cassado did go not between Andres and Valle, but actually into the half space in order to receive the ball right over here and create this kind of triangle that's going on there for Barcelona, right? But in the build-up phase, one thing that I really liked was we didn't see a very static double pivot. You would see in the build-up phase, Cassado was the one who would drop onto the ball like we saw Kimmich do, and that would open up Bernal in order to receive the ball in the space right here, and then he would look to switch and cause trouble from there. Look at the positioning of these players. Modric cannot go out and press Cassado because of Pau Torres' situation going on. And Brahim has to come back. He doesn't have a choice, right? Very vertical approach from Hansi Flick. And Valle would be receiving the ball out wide. And imagine if this is Lamine Yamal who's going to get the ball. And I think Flick may try to get Lamine in these situations, right? And then look at the build-up phase. You can see Cassado going out wide into the half space, drawing the players ultimately away from the center. This is what you want. We always saw a static double pivot under Xavi, right? But look at how Bernal now gets the ball, and look at how wide Cassado is. So Endrick just has to come back. He does not have a choice. So this is really forcing your position. In the build-up phase for Madrid, Barcelona looked to press a lot more higher than we did against Manchester City. And you see that Pablo Torre actually was one-on-one against Martin, the defensive midfielder of Real Madrid. And you saw our wingers come extremely narrow in order to put some pressure on the centre-back. So we pressed much higher than Real Madrid did. So it's kind of like a 4-2-3-1. And Valle would come out to front or to Lucas, whichever side Real Madrid looked to build up. And if Modric looked to join, Cassado was more than happy to go up higher and actually press him. So a lot more pressure applied than Real Madrid did. We pressed much higher than we did against Manchester City, because you can see here Robert Lewandowski pressing the goalkeeper, and then look at Pablo Torre on the defensive midfielder extremely high, right? And you can see that Balde was onto Goulet in this instance, right? Because Real Madrid's system was a little bit scrappy, and then you can see Pablo Torre was still on the defensive midfielder of Real Madrid. And look at Valle coming all the way forward to Valle, and you can see that the winger is marking Rudiger in that instance in the half space right there. Higher up the pitch, this 4-2-3-1 didn't really work well for Barcelona, because Modric and Ceballos would receive the ball just next to Barcelona's double pivot in this situation right here, which we saw that the 4-2-3-1 did mold into a 4-1-4-1 situation. Which meant that the pass now to Modric was blocked by Cassado, right? Which was really good. And I like the fact that Barcelona was really playing extremely narrow and had these players in this instance, especially on the wings, in order to block the overloads on either side of the pitch, right? And Barcelona would, of course, look to sift as a team in order to even block the spaces more for Real Madrid. And they really struggled, right? But I would like to say that Flick needs to look at these runs going through here, because we was quite struggling with it a little bit, but I think he will be fixing it as well. Like I said, Barcelona will be defending in a 4-2-3-1 or a 4-4-2 situation, right? But we also saw the 4-1-4-1. Depending on how their position does, we're going to see the defensive structure, right? You can see here Brahim clearly having some space next to Barcelona's double pivot in that area in around there, which we saw Xavi did this quite a lot as well in his reign as Barca manager. And you can see now Cassado coming out a little bit from his position, which blocks ultimately the pass to Brahim or whoever Modric would play in that space right there, in that half space. And you can see Brahim being blocked by Cassado. So this was really great tactics from Hansi Flick, you know, and just awareness and great adaptation from our new manager. But what stands out for me in terms of defending under Hansi Flick in these two games is the ability to have so many people in the wide areas, to be narrow, force them wide, but at the same time you still have a lot of players in that area. Look, Barcelona has 5 players on the wings. So this is what high intensity brings you, right? Defensive stability on the wings. So I think it's going to be hard to play against Barcelona if we can perfect this system, right? If we can do these things right. Look at how many players we have close to each other, very narrow, right? But with high intensity, it's going to be difficult to score against us. So I think Hansi Flick is really trying to improve Barcelona's defensive structure, which is something that we really need at Barca at the moment, because we shipped in like almost double the goals, more than double the goals that we did in the previous season when we won the league, actually. And we know it's Barcelona's defensive structure that wins us the league every single time, and that is something that we need to look at, guys. As always, do subscribe to the channel. It's going to help us a lot to get this family to grow bigger. We might have to do another video. See you in the next one.